to another edition of Be the Change Georgia, where we amplify the voices of the inspiring business leaders surrounding the B Corp and social impact movements across the Southeast to help you learn how to build your legacy at the intersection of people, planet, purpose, and profit. Today, there are more than 8,000 B Corps in over 80 countries and 180 different industries, unified by one common goal: transforming the global economy to benefit all people, communities, and the planet. If you want to learn how to plug into our purpose-driven business community alongside the inspiring leaders we feature on this show, check us out at blocalgeorgia.com or on Instagram or Facebook at blocalgeorgia, and we'll hope to meet you at our next event. Today you'll have the opportunity to learn from Peter Georgariou, founder and CEO of KarmaDharma. KarmaDharma is a social purpose agency that helps mission-driven organizations strengthen their strategy and culture to build momentum that holds up under pressure. Peter is a social purpose entrepreneur who transitioned from an 18-year corporate career in radio to building a certified B Corp that rejects formulaic leadership in favor of radical human connection. He is a leader who's navigated the messy middle of burnout and faced his own mortality during a cancer scare, which has led him to a philosophy of living for something beyond himself. In our conversation, we explore the sobering reality that purpose-driven work can often lead to burnout, and why building a profitable, sustainable business is actually the strongest form of advocacy for the B Corp movement. We discuss the no margin, no mission mindset, the power of treating employees like adults through radical trust, and how to navigate the dormant seasons of human performance. Stay tuned to learn how to lead with more trust and less control in your own leadership journey. We hope you enjoy the episode. Peter, welcome to the show. Great to finally have you on. How you doing?
Great to be here, dude. Thanks for having me.
I'd ask how the weather is up there, but I already know it's cold and snowy.
Yes, and today we get to add some rain to it. It just adds to the joy.
Oh boy. Well, excited to have you on, and people are probably like, why is somebody from Canada on the podcast? But we like to feature B Corps and leaders from throughout the region and not just the state of Georgia. And we have a new little venture going down in the great state of Georgia. So I figured have you on, pick your brain, and talk a little bit about mission-driven business. So
let's do it.
Let's do it. First question I want to ask is like getting into the KarmaDharma, like background, the whole founding story. Like, what was it? You wanted to build something that was, I guess I would call it a counterweight to some of the anger and cynicism that dominates our narrative right now. So what is the vision behind it, and what drove you to build it? Because you've been what now, 9 years, 10 years, almost 10 years?
Just about 9. Yeah, we'll be 9 in February.
Sweet. So yeah, tell me about it and tell me what drove that decision to do what every idiot does, which is like, I'm going to start my own business.
Well, it started actually out of desperation and fear is the real answer. I ended an 18-year career in radio as, surprise, surprise, radio was not thriving in the world of the internet, and spent 7 years letting people go. And finally, one day it was my turn and here's some money, please go away. And I decided at that moment, I didn't want to get another gig. I didn't want to resent myself or my wife for just going to work for somebody else. So I'm going to start my own shop. And I spent $20 and I got us incorporated. And I went to Starbucks and I started calling people I knew. And that morphed a lot, obviously, dude, over time, to which we became a B Corp and purpose driven and started working in the charitable sector and all sorts of stuff. But the impetus was really a kick in the ass at the end of my corporate career. And the big step into courage, because a lot of people at the time were getting laid off, was a lot of them just took their severance payment and got another job and put that money in the bank. And I decided I wanted to take a bet on myself. If I didn't give this a shot in this lifetime, I'd be pissed at the end of it all. And that's what got me into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I had the same exact thing. Like the fear of failure was never, I don't know. It wasn't about that. It was more about the fear of growing old and thinking like, man, I should have tried that.
The fear, dude, it's so funny you say that, man, because I really was doing some coaching work with my coach, getting down to this base fear of whether I'm not enough or not disciplined enough or not good enough and all these things. And it ultimately boiled down to this fear of dying with regret. And I was like, oh my God, first of all, just saying that made me sort of want to throw up, but I'm back. That does continue to drive me to see what I'm able to create and to build and to put back into the universe and see who I become along the way and the people I meet, almost Star Wars style, the people you're going to meet along your journey. So I'm really stoked and working hard. I've had a rough 2 weeks, but working hard at not dying with regret is a driving force.
So talk about that counterbalance to like, I mean, well, I would just say today between, and I know your feelings on social media, but like as you build KarmaDharma, like what is that like? Talk to me about like trying to build something bright in the world.
Oh my God. Great question. I know you used my words earlier. I really want to be a counterweight to the current narrative of anger, hate, and cynicism and the mental health epidemic that we're going through. I can't personally save the planet, nor do I believe the planet needs saving. The planet's going to be fine. We might be out, but it feels to a certain point at the speed, and I have teenage daughters and I watch them and their friends and I watch our millennial staff, and some days it feels like we're breaking as a species. Anxiety, depression, suicide, you name it, is on the rise. Prescriptions on the rise, treatments on the rise. And I hope at the end of it all, I'd like to be on the side trying to do a little good. If I really boiled it down, dude, like how can I reduce human suffering, right? How could I infuse a little more meaning and a little more fulfillment into the lives we have? We're here for a very brief amount of time. I think we take that for granted sometimes. And so helping people have the courage to be themselves in this lifetime and go kick some ass, starting with me as client number one and still working on that. But I think that people could use a little more joy and happiness and a sense of meaning in this life. And ultimately for a long time, man, I was running away from that purpose as I thought that's like not a real job or not a real thing. I should be selling a widget. If I was a real entrepreneur, I'd sell a widget and get rich. But helping people come home to themselves and find meaning and help ripple affect that out to the people in their world feels like the greatest calling of all time.
Well, I still remember. So Peter and I first met at Champions Retreat in 2024, which is the big B Corp conference. And then we scheduled some time to chat afterwards. And I remember you telling me, these words still stick out in my head. When I met you, you were what social impact work looks like when it's gone drastically wrong. And you were the first person I think that could see through the facade of, you could see, and this is a year and a half ago, and it honestly didn't really catch up to me to this year. You could see the burnout. You could see almost the anxiety and this lack of my own willingness to really deal with, I think, the burden that is, and you just talked about this work, the burden that is thinking we have to save the planet or thinking we'll even be able to. So I don't know whether that's a question or me just thanking you for being the first person to kind of point out that like, hey, maybe you need to go get some help, brother.
Well, sorry, I didn't want to be in that sobering way. However, I would say, dude, I was saying that about you, but it was my observation about the purpose-driven movement, about a lot of small to medium-sized businesses are struggling. And if you want to be a purpose-driven business, you want to pay living wages and you want to have health benefits and you want to do all these things. It costs a little bit more financially, but that investment is worth gold in my world. And so if we're going to run a business that's doing more good and not optimized for pure profit, we have to find a different way to run it and not run ourselves into the ground trying to do it. And so I don't think that's a you thing, man. I think it's almost the purpose-driven world thing. And hey, my own self-doubt and my ability as an entrepreneur. Just last week, I'm like, am I the right guy for this job? I am not sure. And that's a legit thought. And I was up at 3 a.m. So it's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. But I'm okay with it now. I've making peace. But I think it's really real. And trying to quiet. So you take that as an entrepreneur in a purpose-driven world, and then if you so choose, you layer on all the crap that the news is throwing on us, or the external environment events, and which is at a 99.99% clip, shit we can't control. yet we are re-triggered by it on the daily for those following the news and to no end. And so I'm really watching out for both social entrepreneurship as a thing at the same time as what is our place. Man, this is going to sound really out there. But anyways, our place in the world. What do we actually control? What do we want to focus our time and effort on? And I would argue we need some healing, and I would like to be a small part of that.
Well, and you've also been, I would say, I mean, you and I probably both, and maybe this is why we jive so well, like an outspoken advocate as well, though, in the B Corp community and the social entrepreneurship community, of the strongest advocacy we can do is building sustainable, healthy businesses and bottom lines.
Yep.
What is, I mean, I would love for you to elaborate on that, because I think a lot of us, we get confused by people who aren't in this space, who think that we're just literally sitting around in a forest, with our little like drum set, sitting around a campfire or something at all times. But then also for the people that are in the community of like, yes, we want to do the right thing because it's the right thing. But then you've talked about this struggle that we all have. And even I have an MBA and I struggled with it of like, I should know this stuff. But we all struggle with this battle between wanting to be like the greatest from an ethical standpoint and forgetting about the greatest from the financial standpoint and blending the two of those.
Yeah, my experience, I guess, coming out of that Champions Retreat, and I'm proud to be a B Corp, and I will continue to be a B Corp. I think setting the standard and being a light and exemplar for how business can be done is important to me and everybody we work with. I say that, and I left Champions Retreat a little bit down because we talk so much about business as a force for good, yet it was capital G good, and actually B was non-existent, or almost, it felt shameful to talk about business. It was kind of weird. Maybe that's just my perception. And I've had some chats recently with the folks at B Lab, and there tends to be some agreement that we need to come back to thinking about how do we prop up strong businesses, because there's a ton of wonderful things that come with capitalism. It's not all the crazy Elon Musk shit and all the 1%. Okay, there is abuse, yes. But capitalism, like the old Churchill quote about democracy is the worst system except for all the rest. There's a lot. I'm looking for a better system than capitalism. I don't think it's out there. And even somewhere in Canada that's more socially leaning, we're still capitalists. So how can we go leverage the best of capitalism, not to excess, but to actually drive the financial gains that allow us to do the giving back and the good, and to support our people in a meaningful way? Because with the charities we work with, it's not my quote, but there is no margin, no mission. And I'd say the same for B Corps. If you can't drive a profit and survive, you can't go give back and be 1% for the planet and do all the stuff you want to do, right? You just can't do both. So I don't know. I feel dude, there needs to be like a balancing of the force between the business and the good. No longer make business a taboo word. And how can we support and educate driving business acumen in the goal of making the world a better place through, small and medium-sized business? There are the Patagonias, but there's very few B Corp Patagonias, right? There's a hell of a lot more SMBs, mom and pop shops, which drive the economies, that could really, really use some help. And I would like to find a way to learn how to run an environmentally and socially friendly business and a profitable one at the same time, and not throw that capitalism baby out with the bathwater, which seems counterproductive to me.
Yes. I mean, I could piggyback on this for hours, but I'd side rail the conversation. But yes, and yes. Yeah, I think we need more of that. And one of the things you have big on your radar for this upcoming year is doing business with more B Corps, and not from obviously a revenue growth standpoint is great, but also a something that has been missing, I think, from our community is we all kind of look at B Lab and we're like, hey, where's the biz dev help? Why aren't you introducing me to other B Corps? And then you turn around and you look at your own stack of receipts and realize, well, I'm not exactly buying from any B Corps either. So I don't know why I expect them all to do business with me, but I don't expect myself to do business with them. So let's talk a little bit about kind of that the desire to do business with more B Corps, and then also I'd say let's morph that into a little bit too of what I know you have an office now in Philly, and now you and I have a joint venture where we're building out a little beachhead in the Southeast United States too.
Yeah, so twofold things that come up for me in there, dude. Like when we entered the US market last year through actually the acquisition of a small B Corp that I met at Champions Retreat on the front seat of a bus on the way to a sustainable fishery dinner. Hashtag M&A process. But, we intentionally went out and we're dealing with Jim Black, our B Corp lawyer, and Sensiba, our B Corp accountant, and our B Corp bank. And we chose intentionally everywhere we could to get a B Corp supplier. Yet when I became a B Corp and we became a B Corp, I realized that I think, and people ask me about it today, Nathan, I'm like, well, B Lab is a certification body. They're not necessarily a networking organization like a Vistage or an EO or these things. And so it took me a minute to realize if I'm going to go activate the community or build my relationships, turns out I got to do my own push-ups and B Lab ain't going to do them for me. And that's okay, right? I think there's some expectation that, become a B Corp, it's going to magically rain purpose-driven dollars, which is a fallacy. Be nice, but it's a fallacy. And I think it's okay that we go out and build our own businesses and do the thing. So yes, I'm fully committed to do as much. And there's easy wins on getting B Corp suppliers that actually aren't necessarily more expensive by any stretch. But you got to go do the work. But I sort of think that's kind of like always true about all things, but we come here and it's like, no, aren't you driving leads for me? No. Okay. So yeah, I think those are two different things. I think activating the community requires some work, whether that's like all the amazing stuff you're doing with Be Local Georgia, or we're part of Be Local Ontario up here. So that's part of the work, but there's actually like just the pure outreach and support and encouraging people to do it. Because I agree, if all B Corps dealt with B Corps, the B Corp P&L would be in a lot better shape than it currently is. But it's funny because, but I've known Johnny and Mary for years. Well, I'm not going to switch them for a B Corp, am I? And so you get a lot of that, which I get. Yet at the same time, there's the rubber hits the road a little bit. And I believe you taught me the term woke washing. And, like there's some of this point where you can talk about being a B Corp and it's great to have on your website, but geez, mofo, aren't you going to just do the thing, please, and support the community? And so that does require a little bit of extra effort, switching your bank, low key pain in the ass. But in the end, if you think about how long it takes you to do it, not that hard. Environmental impact's huge, as we all know. And so, yeah, I don't know, like anything worth doing in life, dude, it takes a little bit of work. But it feels great supporting the community personally, And
I always say too, you get out of this community what you put into it too. But again, like you said, and again, it's we've had these debates, even in Atlanta, you have these debates of like, best in class, like when looking for suppliers, like do you go, like what do you value more, local, B Corp, minority owned, woman owned, black owned, like what, and so like having to judge all, but again, I don't think we have to switch everything. I think it's just that practice of actually being intentional about looking at our spend and going like, okay, if our spend right now is 0, let's increase that. It doesn't have to be I think people just make goals and kind of make, whatever, they're aspirational and they haven't even really measured what am I currently spending with other B Corps. And I think that should be a metric we're all tracking.
For sure. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but you go through the work of getting certified, which is work, and then you just go back to business. The implementation, as you know better than anybody, is when what do they call it? The rubber hits the road, so to speak. So yeah, for sure.
And then let's talk a little bit about Georgia, and then I want to get back into your. I want to talk a little bit about legacy, but the Georgia piece. And you said before that it wasn't necessarily. I don't mean this in a bad way about my state. Like it wasn't necessarily Georgia. It was more the opportunity that you saw here. So talk a little bit about, and again, this is a weird question to ask because I'm on the other half of this equation, but talk a little bit about your own, I guess, as we start to build this. Yeah, exactly. As we start to build this thing in Georgia together. And obviously I'm well known across the Southeast, and we have Build Southeast and stuff, but talk about your vision, because I know it isn't even just Georgia. You have a vision for KarmaDharma also to be a major player in the purpose-driven landscape, building this make the world a better place agency. It's across North America, but we're kind of this like first, I think I said beachhead down in the Southeast. So I'd love to hear more about the vision, not just for what we're doing in Georgia, but for what you plan to do across the country or across the continent. Sorry, I keep forgetting Canada's not our 51st state.
Not yet, dude. I would love to see, back to my earlier point, how can we leverage the best of capitalism to scale our impact? And so that would ideally, in some future state, working with a host of different partners, whether that's through mergers and acquisition. And we're also working with another B Corp, Up and Over Advisors, Hannah Sandmeyer, who is a phenomenal firecracker of a woman and an incredible advisor, identifying other B Corps that may be looking to get out or looking to join something bigger than themselves. And then how can we share back-end resources and work together? So my vision would be, how could we jokingly call it Deloitte for do-gooders, but how could we have a purpose-driven professional services firm? Like I love what Sensiba and John's done there, taking something from 20, 30 people to 500 plus and different services across predominantly North America, but now internationally. So scaling a purpose-driven professional services firm can be done. And I think more business being done in a way that's values aligned would feel good to me. One day I'd love to get it big enough, like Nathan, I want to cut like $1 million check to charity one day. Like if I retired and I could like sit there and I'm going to like, okay, I'm cutting that check. That means we've done something incredibly well. We've proven that the purpose-driven model is scalable and doable. And so if I link that back to Georgia specifically, is really finding partners. I feel it's so cliche, but it's like values aligned, someone I feel I can hang out with and they're not going to drive me crazy. And something we can build, and it's complementary, right? You do stuff we don't do. I do stuff you don't do. Hey, how can we come into this and do 1 + 1 = 3 and drive a broader impact? When every time I come to Atlanta and see you and we spend a day or two at Rice at the Russell Innovation Center, I leave, man, incredibly humbled and energized for what's being done there and supporting, underrepresented folks in the South. I'm clearly aware of my race and my privilege, but I would love to contribute in some way to elevating it. And I see what you do in your work, working for Minority Business Council and all of that. And I'm like, holy shit, I got to be doing more of that. And so both wanting to scale the business that can be impact driven and done well, working with people I love, doing amazing work, and then supporting communities that clearly don't need me, just for the record, but like that I'd love to be a part of and contributing to. That feels good as hell.
Yes. No, 100%. And yes, that building's magical. It always, I don't know, it just kind of wraps its arms around you. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited to build this in the Southeast. I'm excited to continue building throughout North America, hopefully beyond. I have a German client. Shout out Carson. But anyway, like one of the things too, is you talk about this, building it and you're touching on basically too, I think the big thing with capitalism and the big thing with scaling B Corps is that if we're successful and we're sustainable, we can, scaling our bottom line scales our impact, scales that ability to write the $1 million check.
Yep.
And so as we scale all this, but like the one other part of this that I think goes untalked about, or, I always say like my mission in life is to help create jobs that don't suck. So like, there's also a people element of this too, like growing to a 500 person company creates 500 jobs that people hopefully don't hate coming to on Monday and aren't sitting there with the Sunday scaries. So I'd love for you to like talk about the people part of this equation, and then what you're envisioning and how you're pouring into the people at KarmaDharma.
Oh my God. People's my favorite part, man. When I was after leaving my radio career, I looked back on the previous years, and the only part that I loved about it was the people. And whether it was coaching and mentoring or sitting for someone in their tears or whatever that might be, I really, I think people are just starved for someone to be present for them, and maybe overused, but seen and heard, and actually like, I'm with you and I'm here for you without judgment, without reprisal. I just would love to support that, whatever that might be, support your joy, or what you're going through is hard. And I recognize that hard, and I'm here for you, and I'm not going to come in and fix it or mansplain it away. But, I think so. Us trying to do that, when I talk about helping people have the courage to be themselves in this life, it is actually supporting them in their journey of becoming. So helping that, whether that's through leadership training and through coaching, or our annual retreat, or through ongoing conversations. And I tell our team all the time, I don't want you to try and become like me. I want to figure out how I can help you do you. And then how do you want to be supported in that? Because what works for me from a growth perspective may not work for you. You ask people how they like to receive feedback. I want feedback fast and furious, but this person said to me, no, I would like you to send me an email about what you want to talk to me about. I'll take time to digest that. And then if I see it appropriate, we'll book some time and we'll discuss it. That's like, holy smokes. First of all, it took me a second to not think they were an alien. But after that, I started to realize is like, wait a minute, people have different learning styles. People need more structure. People need more time. People not everyone, I know this is crazy, process their thoughts out loud. Some people like go inside, So I think once again, maybe overused, but people actually know that you care about them. You want the best for them, whether that's at KarmaDharma or not. And I joke and say, I'd love it if we worked together forever, but odds against that are low. So I don't know, man, just helping them not try and be their Obi-Wan Kenobi, for a lack of a better term, but how could we create this culture where I am going to help you do you and support you in the way that you would like to be supported, at the speed you want to be supported, and the time you want to be supported. And maybe if I treat you like an adult, i.e., you do what you say you're going to do, and I don't policy you to death to do the right thing, you might just do the right thing when the moment calls, even when the timing's tough. So, we've had an unlimited personal time off policy for several years now. Been warned against it. Even the person who recommended that I do it has stopped doing it. But it hasn't bit us in the ass yet. I think I've had one conversation of, hey, I feel that might be a little too much. But it's amazing when you start trusting people that they might do the right thing, that they usually do the right thing. But you're also talking to a person who believes people are inherently good. Despite what's in the news, I think on a percentage basis, 99.999% of people are good, who want to be kind, who want to be helpful. And so I approach that world that I believe the universe is friendly, and that allows for space for people to screw things up. And I tell them when I hire them, you're going to F something up. I don't know what it is, and I don't know when, but I promise it's going to happen. And as long as we get to talk about it and your pride doesn't get in the way of you dealing with it or being honest about it, it's going to be okay. And I'm still going to love you. And so I don't know. I think just creating a place where people can bring their whole selves to work, where they can say, hey, started some coaching and therapy because I'm working through some shit. I say, like, damn, good for you. That takes a lot of courage. And then providing.
He's talking about me right now.
Well, dude, it's funny you say that, but it's not just you. If I talk about, like, we have 3 team members in the last year who've said some variation of that. I'm like, man, I am stoked that A, you're doing it, because it takes courage to say, hey, I don't feel like dragging this baggage. And 2, hey, maybe we've done something right. If someone feels they can say that and they're not getting mocked or laughed out of the room or belittled, or so yeah,
I think become a liability. They feel like they're a liability now. Where like, I can't. I'm good. I got this. Like, I'm your A player. Like, hey, I'm still an A player, but I need to spend I'm on the IR right now.
Well, it's funny you say that, dude, because I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we have this fascination that we are going to be operating at this high level and blossoming and optimizing every day of the year. But if you look in nature at when flowers bloom, they don't bloom 12 months a year at the same time. Trees go dormant in the winter, and they're not dead, or they're not a loser. They're not good enough. It's just winter, for Christ's sake, And so you're like, but as humans, it's like, no, I got to be on. Like every day I'm on and everything's good and I'm fine. And I was like, oh my God, what if we could just accept their humanity and we offered that space up to them? Maybe we could work miracles. And so, yes, we have the other things like a pension plan and the time off and the leadership training. And I would argue perhaps, Nathan, some of the transactional things that go with being a good business and checking some boxes. But I'm hoping maybe the secret sauce is just seeing them as humans, accepting them as humans, and being messy. And that's okay. And we still love you, and we're here for the whole ride. Maybe that could be the difference maker.
I hope so. I mean, optimistically, I hope so. That, yeah, treating people like grown-ups. What a novel idea. It almost sounds too like, as you describe this too, it's like, I think most anybody listening, and even to me sitting here interviewing you, I'm like basically trying to describe like, what would the perfect boss be? And I think we've all had the opposite end of that too, though. Like, why aren't you, it's 9:02, why aren't you in your seat? Like that type of thing too, where like, what if, like, it's a crazy experiment, but like, what if all those times we're like, why doesn't this person just trust me to get my job done? Like, what if we just tried that and see what happens?
Nathan, so I'm watching, like, this is funny. I'm watching this Ken Burns documentary on the history of genetics and genes. Okay. And it goes through the whole history of how they found out what genes are and the double helix. And this is going back to like the late 1800s into the 1950s. And then there's like essentially these 4 amino acids, whatever the 4 A, G, C, T, whatever they are. And then they just realized that they thought that DNA was like, actually they called it the stupid gene because it was too simple, and that like proteins must be at the basis of all we are as humans and all the makeup of every entity. And they dismissed DNA because it was so simple, until they found the structure of all things in the world living are based out of these like 4 letters, these 4, I think they're amino acids, and they all connect in the most elegant of ways. And maybe I think we do overcomplicate it. Like you talk about, it's like, it sounds too simple, but sometimes like we're trying to policy to death behavior, or, like this is why like sick days or vacation seems a little bit crazy to me. If I said, do you need exactly 4 weeks this year, or 3 weeks, or 4 sick days, and you're going to work to this thing? And I'm like, if you need time, take the friggin' time, and just don't take advantage of the time. And when you don't need the time, come to work. And it's amazing when you empower people with being responsible and respectful. So, when you're off, your colleagues are picking up the gap for you. So just, and when you're gone, they pick it up for you. So just be respectful. I think people naturally want to elevate to this, but then when you have all these policies, oh, no, I must fit in to get my gold star over here. So I don't know. I come back to the elegance and the simplicity of DNA is all the most important shit in the world is not measurable. Whether it's love, I don't know how much you love your wife on a scale of 1 to 10, how generous, compassionate, present, like all the most important things that we can be and how we can show up as humans are measureless. Yet we harp on all the shit that we can measure because if you can't measure it, you're a bad business person. You're not on the right thing. And so I don't know. I don't want to get away from the spreadsheet and the percentage increase of love for my colleague this year, but I think maybe we can get back to the simplicity and basics of human interaction. It might just be a revolution. I don't know. It's an experiment. I'll keep you posted. Might all blow up. We'll see.
And as you talk about these things too, like, you've been open about talking, and honestly too, like, I want to bring it up because you've talked about mental health. You've talked about all the, like, in a weird way. And and I've told you how I want to talk more. I have to figure out how I want to package it, but like, I want to share some of my journey this year just to encourage people that, as my therapist told me, you're severely burned out. I want to share that story a little bit. I just have to figure out how. But you've also been open, like you also went through a cancer scare. and like this kind of like, because you talk very freely about your mortality and da da da, like it's like, so how has that affected like this entire journey? And I think, what is that? I don't know. How has that freed you up to like live for this legacy and to have faced it already, to kind of maybe enjoy this ride a little bit more?
That's a good question, dude. I think the short answer is probably yes. I think I've also done, when my life blew up in late 20s at the end of a 10 years of addiction and a lifetime of just, shit growing up. And then I went to a year of intense therapy thinking, man, I don't want to go into my marriage and my perhaps future kids having to deal with all this baggage. And so I've been on this journey of, trying to unpack what makes me tick and what makes me trip myself up and the stories I'm telling myself about myself in the world. And so it's this ongoing thing. And, but you start making peace with, once you are never going to arrive, and I'm going to be trying to be a little bit better for the rest of my life, takes the pressure off of being perfect or showing up perfect or, showing up calm, cool, and collected in every instance of my life. My wife's, she's like, wow, what if the world saw this? This doesn't sound like video Peter on LinkedIn, does it? And so I'm like, well, maybe not. So you got my moments. But I was just talking to Brian, which you and I know, and he's just telling me at lunch, I think I'm starting to let go of what people think about me. I'm like, well, how's that feel? And it's like, well, he sits back and he thinks like, it's very freeing. And I'm like, yeah. And I still catch myself on both sides. I can see, yeah, F the haters and I don't care what anybody thinks. And yet, well, yeah, that's partially true, but not always true. And so, yes, dude, I would say cancer will still certainly wake you up, to the brevity of the time we have on this earth walk, for sure. But I've been thinking about it a while, about how I want to show up. And, the root of suffering is hoping the world's different than it is. And so I stopped stewing about the Trumps of this world and all of this crap, because I can't do it and I can't change it. And me wanting Trump to be different than he is a waste of my time, and he couldn't give a shit and it ain't changing anything. So you start to come back real quick to a very small locus of control or sphere of influence that we have. And my wife says, you're going to be ignorant, because I stopped watching the news like 6 months ago. And I'm like, yeah, I feel a hell of a lot better. And I haven't met one person who watches the news who feels hopeful and excited after, nor actually do they have any actionable thing they can do with that information rather than being traumatized and re-triggered. Unless there's a hurricane or a flood coming your way, most news of every disaster going on around the world is not serving us. So kind of like I spend more and more time in my bubble. Not that I don't want to know, but it doesn't serve me or help me. And it just increases my level of anxiety. And I get frustrated when I see these things that go against my values. But we're just overexposed. I just don't think as a species we're meant to be exposed to the amount of information we are. Like we just, whatever those crazy stats are, we're exposed more than probably in 20 minutes than someone was in a lifetime 200 years ago, informationally, this type of stuff. And so we're not meant to be running at this speed. You're not meant to know of every like warlord, despot, terrorist that's ever existed every day. The news is just crazy for me. So I say all this, sorry, I'm rambling. I come back to, I control very little other than the 4 inches between my 2 ears. And I want to focus all my time on how I'm showing up and what's holding me back, which is me, nobody else but me. And I want to unpack that. And I want to try and do as much friggin' good as I can while I'm here. So I have this sense of urgency to get shit done while I'm here, because at 51, I'm not getting more spry as we go, despite me trying to play flag football with my daughter and nearly killing myself in my groin, but I'm still out there. But I'm just saying, I got to focus on what I can. And so, yes, Sorry, long story, not so short at all. Yes, it's definitely been freeing, but it has to be a constant reminder. Like I have this note on my screen. I need to be here to be free. If I'm anywhere else in the world than in this moment with you on this call, I can't be free. I can't wait till one day things are going to be better. And I can't, there's also that quote, it's never too late to have a great childhood, to like let go of all the shit that's happened to you and just be here right friggin' now and do the best you can in that moment.
Amen. Well, we'll leave it at that, man. I'll just say I'm grateful for you. I think
Thank you, man. Me
the
too.
B Corp community is grateful for you. I think you're doing great work, and I think you'll continue to build something special. And excited to see where that goes.
We will build something special.
We will build something special in our Operation Atlanta, Operation Georgia. But just excited to see your continued success, which is our continued success, but also just for the sake of building something special and understanding that our success means that we can create more awesome jobs. And hopefully one day we can stand there with the giant check that I always tell people, like, don't take a picture with your check to charity. But if it's $1 million, I think we take our picture. But we'll keep building towards that and making the world better one day at a time.
Let's do it, dude. Let's do it. Thanks for the opportunity to come chat. Really appreciate it. And I hope you're celebrating all the work and the good you're putting into the world, Nathan, for real.
We're starting to.
Awesome, dude.
Thanks, Peter.
Well, that wraps up another edition of Be the Change Georgia. We're grateful, as always, for the opportunity to serve you with this content and grow this incredible community of purpose-driven B Corp leaders. If you haven't already, we would be grateful for you to rate the show wherever you get your podcasts by simply tapping the number of stars you think it deserves and sharing it with a friend. This helps us get the word out and continue to use our collective influence as a force for good. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the help from our production team at Chat with Leaders Media. Learn how you can launch your own podcast to grow your business at chatwithleaders.com. Thanks again for listening, and now go be a leader worth following.